There has been a big, breaking, major development in Donald Trump's trade war with just about every nation on earth. Because just a short while ago, his administration has announced they have exempted imported electronics from those reciprocal tariffs. That includes smartphones, computers, and electronic components. Trump's 145% tariff on Chinese imports could have a major impact on tech giants like Apple, which are based in the United States, but roughly 90% of iPhone production is based in China. Let's dig a bit deeper into this story and bring onto the show Ian Lee. He's an associate professor at Carleton University Sprott School of Business. Professor Lee, good to have you on the show. Thank you for making time.
My pleasure, Natasha. Thank you.
Let me say a couple of things before I dive into the question, just for the purposes of clarity, because I'm hoping you and I can help clarify a lot of confusion for folks. So, Trump was going to bring in tariffs, reciprocal tariffs for dozens and dozens of countries around the world. He pressed pause on those reciprocal tariffs for just about everyone except China. We are already being hit with the automobile, aluminum and steel and other tariffs that were already in place. Reciprocal was not going to hit us. This China issue is critical now with this latest development because we're hearing new guidance from the U.S. Customs and Border Protections that smartphones, computers, and other tech devices and electronic components are going to be exempt. So what does that mean, Professor Lee?
Sure. Thank you, Natasha. Let me just put some big picture numbers on
Please.
this, just to provide a picture frame around this. The United States is the largest economy in the world, 30 trillion GDP. China is the second largest economy in the world, 19 trillion GDP, expressed in US dollars. China exports to the United States 500 billion a year, just to the US, which is $500 billion a year. US exports to China $100 billion a year. So the US is less dependent in the sense that they're selling a lot less stuff and measured in dollars to China. But China is selling a lot more, and a lot of that are consumer electronics. The problem is that there's an awful lot of people in the United States, and I would say Canada too, that buy laptops and iPhones and all that good stuff. I'm about to buy a new laptop, and it's not going to be a $200 laptop. It's going to be a very nice laptop, several thousand, couple of thousand, 3,000. And so I think what he's trying to do is be more surgical to mitigate or reduce the hit to American consumers because they vote. And the off-year elections are a year away. We know that in November of 26. And so the other stuff, because China exports a lot of the kind of stuff we see in Walmart, in Canadian Tire, in Home Depot, that sort of thing. I know Canadian Tire is Canadian, but it's that kind of stuff, fast-moving consumer goods that's not very expensive. That stuff is not that critical because that's also being produced by countries like Vietnam. So it's the electronics that's really critical, and I think he's getting a lot of blowback from the tech giants in the States as well as consumers. So he's trying to reduce the blowback, the criticism of him inside the U.S.
I might be asking you an impossible question. You use the word surgical, that President Trump might be trying to be surgical. Is it that he's being surgical? Is it that he's blinking under the pressure that you just mentioned? Or is this just chaos?
No, sorry, you're absolutely right. I mean, he is buckling, responding, whatever word we want, to the pressure. I mean, there are checks and balances in the United States, and it's not just the obvious ones that political scientists talk about, voting against, voting for, and that sort of thing. I consider the stock market is a check and balance on American presidents because it's a harbinger. It's used every day in the media by journalists like you as an indicator of the economy going south versus going north, doing better, doing worse. So I think he is feeling the heat. He saw the incredible blowback in the markets. I'm not talking the political blowback. I'm talking the economic blowback. He's seeing the prices go up. He's seeing the currency depreciate. So he's seeing a lot of negative consequences. And so that's why I think he pushed back the tariffs on the rest of the world, because he realized he could be triggering a worldwide global recession. And that's not the way to get his party reelected in the off-year election. So I think he's coming back on that because he's acknowledging, although he'll never say it publicly, that he made a mistake. And on the China side, again, when I said trying to be surgical, I don't mean that as a compliment. I mean by that, he's trying to reduce the further criticism and blowback inside the United States because, these are, many would say that phones, smartphones, and laptops and computers are pretty well essential today. Once upon a time, they were a luxury good. Now everybody has one, and you just have to have one to function, because how else are you going to connect with the internet and to the virtual world? So I think this is an admission on his part that it's not going the way he wants it to go.
And the markets cannot react today because, of course, it's not a trading day in North America. But I wonder, because just to go back to earlier this week, there was so much up and down in the markets, mostly down. And then all of a sudden the president turned around and said, you know what, we're pressing pause, and the markets surged again. We're rallying again. So from your experience as a business professor, I just wonder how you're viewing that, because it is so unprecedented to see an American president lean in so heavily to what's happening on the markets, and including saying publicly, hey, it's time to buy, it's time to sell. It's just a very strange place we're in.
You're right. And Natasha, here's my prediction, and it's not very complicated. I mean, it's pretty standard stuff that I'm quoting you that we teach in business schools. Markets hate uncertainty and they hate bad news. So when markets are really uncertain or there's bad news, markets tend to go south. I'm not talking individual shares now. We're talking the overall indexes. And so, these tariffs are frightening the market. They're really scaring the markets because it's creating so much uncertainty. So if he either can pull off, I don't know how he's going to do it, but if he can pull off trade agreements with an awful lot of countries and then say, okay, that's it, so he can announce to the markets and to the world, I'm not going to do that anymore, that will bring the markets back. They just want to see stability. And so what he's got to do is stop constantly changing decisions from day to day to day, which in itself is creating additional uncertainty. And he's got to announce some kind of an agreement, negotiated settlement that's going to stabilize things and therefore calm the markets down, because he does pay attention to the markets. But what he's been doing, he's been his own worst enemy. Because, he changes by the hour and by the day. And as I said, that's creating this massive uncertainty. So he's got to either postpone for 90 days and then say, okay, I'm just going to do a unilateral across the board and 10%, and that's all it's going to be, and I'm not going to make any further changes. That will calm down the markets, or come to some kind of a negotiated settlement with those countries and or China. As I said, he is causing the uncertainty. He is making the markets much worse because of his erratic and constant day-to-day changes in the rules of the game concerning tariffs.
Professor Lee, I have a couple more questions I want to get in, and I don't want us to run out of time. So you've given us such a clear analysis of what President Trump might be trying to achieve, what he's hoping to get done through these tariffs and pressing pause. What is your understanding of what China is thinking right now, and what is their long-term game? Can they continue this tit-for-tat back and forth with the tariffs?
I don't think so. I don't think either it's sustainable for either country. The relationship between China and the United States is a fascinating relationship. They're both enormous economies, 30 trillion and 19 trillion. And, they are codependent. I'm not a psychologist, but I picked this phrase up. We all know this phrase from, people in therapy and that sort of thing. This is a codependent relationship. The China is the world superpower in terms of manufacturing and manufacturing exports. They export $1 trillion net to the rest of the world. Half of that is going to the United States. And the United States has become very dependent for all of their retail, mostly their retail, whether it's electronics or all the other stuff you see in stores, for consumers to have everyday low prices, to use that famous tagline from Walmart. And so I think that they're going to come to some kind of a deal. But very quickly, Natasha, I'm not trying to suggest this will end the conflict. They are fighting. China and the U.S. are fighting over domination for the 21st century. Who's going to rule? Who's going to be the hegemon, the superpower that's going to rule the 21st century? We don't yet know. They're fighting tooth and nail. This is part of a larger struggle, if I can put it that way. And this is into, geopolitics and geoeconomics, and we don't yet know, because both of them are doing everything possible to ensure that their side wins.
Wow. So with that in mind, and you mentioned codependency, so that would bring me to us and our very deeply codependent relationship with the United States. Maybe they're not as dependent on us, but when you've got the world's two biggest economies
That's right.
and geopolitical superpowers, as you rightly point out, at war with each other, what does that do to our economy?
It's going to hurt us because we're so small. I know there's some people saying we can stand up to the Americans, and I just think it's delusional. I mean, we're 2.5 trillion, and I understand arithmetic. I think most people do. 2.5 trillion is not even remotely close to 30 trillion. That's why Pierre Trudeau got it right. We're the mouse, they're the elephant. That doesn't mean we give up and lie down and let them stomp all over. We've got to try and chart a relationship, because the idea that we can just walk away and the $1 trillion of bilateral trade with the United States, we can just make it go away and vanish is just nonsense. It's not going to happen. But we can certainly divert or try to diversify our trade so we're not as dependent. And ironically, Natasha, I would suggest that might involve a new trade agreement with China. Now, I don't mean with sensitive technological goods and computers, because the US will go crazy if we tried to do that. But we certainly have a comparative advantage in natural resources. And I don't just mean liquefied natural gas, potash, nuclear, agricultural products from the prairies, canola. I mean, we could call it a low-tech trade agreement with China, a natural resources, if you will, trade agreement with China, as part of our trade diversification, so we're not as dependent. 70% of our exports go to the US. It would be really nice if we could get that down to maybe 50%. We'll still continue to trade with them because we have 250 years of history and almost 9,000 kilometers of geography, and that's not going to disappear. Canada's not leaving North America, and neither is the US. So we're going to continue to trade with them forever and ever, but we need to reduce that and start developing more deeper ties with Asia and with Europe.
Ian Lee, really great to get your perspectives today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much, Natasha. Thank you.
It's our pleasure.